All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into something a little different.
Oh,
We're looking at how feminist ideas,
yeah.
have kind of shaped and like continue to shape the way we think about Gothic literature.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the source material we're diving into goes into, some pretty cool feminist readings of Gothic lit, and
Mhm.
might not be what you think, when you think Gothic lit.
Yeah, we're not just talking about spooky castles and vampires here.
Exactly. It's way more than that. It's about
Right.
like using these supernatural elements, the spooky things to kind of like
Yeah.
expose the real horrors that
Yeah.
women have faced and like
Mhm.
still face.
Especially, under these patriarchal systems.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit.
Sure.
So the source material talks about how Gothic lit often acts as this like critique of
Right.
patriarchal systems
Absolutely.
and shows how they can be so oppressive and confining, especially for women.
You got it. And a classic example of that is the trapped woman trope.
Oh, yeah.
You see it all the time in Gothic literature,
Yeah.
but it's not just about being like physically trapped, right?
Right.
Think about it, those gloomy castles and creepy mansions.
Uh-huh.
They're like metaphors for the societal norms,
Uh,
the expectations that can trap women.
So like the setting itself almost becomes this reflection of like the protagonist's own internal struggles.
Exactly. And you see this really powerfully in Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper.
Oh yeah, I love that story.
Right. So in that story, the protagonist's descent into madness is a direct result of her husband's controlling behavior.
Ugh, yeah, it's like disguised as care, but it's
Right.
totally controlling.
It's a chilling illustration of how these structures can be so damaging to women.
It's like the more we analyze these like supernatural events,
Yeah,
the more we uncover these real world horrors of
absolutely.
limitations and expectations. And it
Totally.
makes you think, and speaking of challenging norms,
Mhm.
we can't forget about Jane Eyre.
Oh, a classic.
Right. So Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, would you say Jane is like a feminist character?
That's a great question.
Or is she ultimately constrained by,
Yeah.
the society she lives in?
Well, it's complicated. On one hand, you have Jane's journey, her desire for education,
Yeah.
her pursuit of a fulfilling life on her own terms.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely resonates with those feminist ideas of self-reliance, challenging expectations.
Right.
But then you have the ending, and some critics argue that by marrying Rochester,
Right.
she ultimately conforms to societal norms.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a really complex issue with no easy answers.
It really makes you think about how these themes are still so relevant.
Absolutely.
Have you ever felt trapped by societal expectations?
Oh, for sure.
I know I do sometimes,
Totally.
feeling that pressure to conform to certain roles.
And that's what's so amazing about Gothic literature.
Yeah.
It speaks to these universal human experiences,
Hmm.
feeling trapped, yearning for autonomy.
Yeah.
It's not just about Victorian England.
No.
It's about these ongoing struggles for freedom and self-expression.
Yeah. And that brings us to some of the more modern Gothic works,
Oh, absolutely.
like Sarah Perry's The Essex Serpent.
Love that book.
Yeah. And as
I-
our source points out, it really digs into these same challenges that
Yeah.
women face, even in like contemporary settings.
Yeah,
They're still navigating all these societal constraints.
for sure.
Yeah.
The Essex Serpent is brilliant at capturing that tension, that
Mhm.
push and pull between societal expectations and individual desires.
Yeah.
It's like even centuries later, the fight for freedom is still ongoing.
Yeah. And it's so cool how Gothic literature, with its themes of entrapment, rebellion,
Yeah.
and resilience,
Yeah.
it gives us this really powerful lens to examine
Absolutely.
gender dynamics,
Mhm.
both past and present.
It's not even just about the individual characters, right?
Yeah.
The Gothic genre itself can be seen as a form of rebellion against traditional literary conventions. It embraces all the stuff that was often suppressed in more mainstream literature.
Like, what do you mean?
The darkness, the grotesque, the emotional, all that good stuff.
Right.
And by doing that, it opens up this space for critique.
That's such a fascinating point. It's like the genre itself is enacting a rebellion.
Precisely. And by exploring those darker aspects,
Yeah.
it pushes us to think critically about gender, power,
Hmm.
all the societal norms.
So it's not just reflecting societal issues.
Right.
It's actively participating in the conversation,
Exactly.
pushing us to really think critically about things.
It really is. And it makes you wonder,
Sure.
are there other genres out there that do the same thing?
Mm.
Are there other forms of art, film,
Yeah.
that serve as these platforms for social commentary?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with.
It is. It's something to think about as you encounter different stories and different art forms.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with me today.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Bye.
Bye.